You know how you get to work. You settle into your office for a nice, calm afternoon, and then someone drops a bomb on your plans? On Wednesday, January 31st, 2024, at 2:17 p.m., that bomb was dropped on me. A seemingly normal day with normal plans that did not include, at any point, a resident coming into my office uttering the words, "I think my relative may have been murdered by the Boston Strangler, insert record scratch noise." Let's back up a bit. This particular man is a longtime resident and just a gem of a human. A little quirky, but quirky in the best way. Someone who wants to know the answers to things around him. Thoroughly inquisitive and a truth seeker. He always came by around the same time, always on a Wednesday. He had come down for a chat several times before, while I was listening to true crime podcasts and typing up my notes. We chatted about conspiracy theories and aliens, all the intriguing ins and outs of the universe and social media. He made friends with my office jumping spider named August. Wanted to know all about jumping spiders and watched him eat his tiny fly with curiosity. I wonder now, looking back on it, if meeting my spider named August ignited the bomb he would drop on me that following Wednesday. The bomb was named Augusta. Augusta Bloomberg, or Goldie as she was known in later life, was born in 1902 under circumstances that I am sure are not included in any expectant mother's birth plans. She was born on the ship that would bring her Jewish-Russian immigrant parents to America. This gave me pause as I reflected on how my own great-grandmother was forced to give her infant a burial at sea during my family's voyage to the land of opportunity just 5 years earlier. It makes me think about how much joy Goldie's birth must have brought to the Bloombergs, to bring new life into the world on that long voyage. A new country, a new baby, a fresh start in a new world. They could never have guessed that their daughter's death would be front-page news just 62 years later. Sorry, now back to Goldie. In the 1905 New York City census, the poor dear is listed as Gussie Bloomberg. I am sure she was thankful that nickname did not stick. She's a Goldie, not a Gussie. April 29th, 1921. Goldie marries Mr. Hyman Fine in Chelsea, Massachusetts. Hyman is working as a meter reader while Goldie is employed as a bookkeeper. They would go on to live for a time in Sharon, Massachusetts. The couple would have 4 children. A son, Melvin, arrived in 1924, a daughter, Shirley, who arrived in 1931, and twin girls named Ruth and Jean, round out the Fine children in 1934. Hyman would go on to own a laundry business. Goldie would be getting ready to join Hyman at the family shop when she meets her death. Once their children were grown and with families of their own, the Fines moved into the first-floor apartment in a home owned by the Martowska family in Norwood. The Martowskas resided in the upper 2 floors of the home located at 16 Lewis Avenue. The home was at the end of a dead-end street which found its terminus in a large open meadow. The morning of April 13th, 1964 started off normally for the Fines. According to news articles, Hyman left for Lord's Cleaners in Canton around 6 a.m. He later reports that his wife was awake when he left and getting ready for her day. Around 8 a.m., Hyman sends an employee of his, Mr. James Roden, inaccurately identified as James Rhodes in the articles, to pick up his wife and their upstairs neighbor, Mrs. Lillian Martowska, who was employed by the Fines at the Cleaners. This was not a daily routine, but also not out of the ordinary. If Hyman needed to arrive early, the ladies would join him later in the morning. For this trip, Hyman loans James's car. Upon arriving at the home, James enters the exterior door to the home and proceeds to the interior door leading to the Fines' apartment. James knocks on the door and does not get an answer from Goldie. He assumes she may be toward the back of the apartment and may not have heard his knocking. He then goes to the upstairs apartment to find Lillian dressed and waiting for her morning ride to work. The two go downstairs together to knock on Goldie's door once more. Again, no answer. One of them decides to try the doorknob. They find it locked. It is unclear who realizes this, but they discover the house key on the car's key ring and open the door a crack. James calls out and hears no reply. The two, thinking Goldie may have fallen or needs assistance, enter the home and make the horrific discovery. They immediately called police. Goldie's body is discovered in the bedroom, lying diagonally across the end of the bed. Her feet are resting flat on the floor, as if she is sitting on the bed and has fallen backward. The sad scene made grislier by 2 of Goldie's own stockings being tied tightly into a ligature around her neck. Goldie finds life ended between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. the morning of April 13, 1964. She would now become a headline, and for a brief 20 hours, a suspected victim of the Boston Strangler. News reporters flock to the quiet dead-end street almost immediately. Hyman returns to the home and speaks with police. It is the beginning of a nightmare that haunts Hyman until his death in 1981. There are only 3 Boston Globe articles about the death of Goldie. The first article was published in the evening edition on April 13th. The headline reads, "Mystery cloaks woman's death with an above line of stockings around neck, sparking fears that the strangler has struck again." It details the position of her body. That she is clothed, however, the police and/or James Lillian would report to Hyman that she was either nude or partially undressed when police made entry. The article states all the windows were locked from the inside, though it does not note if the door could be locked from inside or if it needed a key to be locked from the outside. The article ends with what would become the running theme for tomorrow's article: Goldie was a frail old lady in poor health. The 2 articles published on April 14th, 1964 go on to paint a picture of the scene. They both state that there are no signs of forced entry to the apartment, not through a window, not through a door. There are no signs of anyone struggling either with Goldie or anywhere in the home. Everything is in order, nothing out of place or missing. And again, Goldie is a frail old lady. Deeper into the paper, on page 32, Goldie's death notice can be found. She would be buried that same day, April 14th, 1964, with the religious memorial week of Shiva taking place at the home of her daughter, Jean. The articles make Goldie out to be a 92-year-old woman, not a 62-year-old woman. The autopsy determines her manner of death to be strangulation by ligature, noting that there are no broken bones in her neck. It details her psoriasis and her upcoming eye surgery for cataracts. She previously had the same surgery on her other eye, which was successful. It details her weight as being 90 pounds without reference for that number, nor any mention of her height. Goldie was a woman of shorter stature. 90 pounds wouldn't have been all too shocking for the time. The article all but outright states she decided to take her life due to her fragile medical condition, while at the same time making note that there is no explanation for the stockings around her neck. It is concluded by investigators that she is not a victim of the Boston Strangler that same evening. This is where my brain melted. I cannot tell you how many times I reread these 3 articles. It had only been 3 months since the last killing that police could tie to the Boston Strangler. How could this be dismissed so easily? Everything matched up. The Strangler left no signs of forced entry at his scenes. That's part of his calling card. Goldie had been to the hospital recently to be evaluated before her surgery. Again, part of his pattern. Most of his victims either worked in healthcare, had recently been to a hospital, or lived close to a hospital. The only thing that was different in this case is that Goldie was married, the other victims were single. How does it make better sense to investigators that this woman, with minor health ailments, would commit suicide in the same way as the Strangler kills his victims? What 62-year-old woman would commit suicide in a way to make it seem as if a serial killer did it, without leaving a note, knowing that a friend or loved one would find her like that? How can they say in the very same paragraph that Goldie was so frail and fragile, yet had the strength to tie 2 stockings into a ligature around her neck, stopping her ability to breathe? If we were to entertain the theory of suicide, there was a whole cupboard of cleaning chemicals she could have used under the sink. She could have gone to the pharmacy around the corner and gotten any number of pills to end her life. Why would she pick this method? Why would she want to bring attention to her death? Did even examine the possibility of James Roden, or even her husband, Hyman, being a suspect? She was a mother, a wife, a grandmother. And we are expected to believe she ended her life over itchy skin and anxiety over cataract surgery. Seriously, Boston police? This is the best story the Strangler division can come up with? I decided to dig into the days, weeks and months of news articles related to the Boston Strangler to come up with a reason why this had to be a suicide for the police. I would search all 16 months back to 1962 if I had to. I didn't have to dig deeper than a week back to uncover the reason why police had to rule Goldie's death a suicide. On April 8, 1964, a Boston area theater hosted the premiere of the Hollywood feature film called The Strangler. The clearly exploitative movie utilizes elements from the Boston Strangler killings, portraying the killer as appearing slovenly and disgruntled by his lab tech job in a hospital. He has zero luck with the ladies and is targeting the female nurses in the hospital where his super-controlling mother is undergoing care for a recent heart attack. He goes to an amusement park and falls for a carny girl at the ring toss game where he wins a doll. He kills a couple nurses, goes out with the carny girl, then kills his mother's nurse. He then confesses to his mother, which then causes his mother to die of a heart attack. The police are onto him though and set up a sting operation with the help of the carny girl. The strangler is shot when police burst into the room while he is busy strangling her, and he flies dramatically through the window, falling to his death. Yeah, I know. Not one of Hollywood's finest features. Despite the self-described fictional film earning 1 star in my rating book, it's seemingly a hit and is shown in over 14 theaters throughout the Boston area that week, drawing even bigger crowds the weekend of April 10th-12th. On April 12th, the Boston Globe publishes an article titled 6 Main Suspects in Stranglings, in which the reporter details findings of the Attorney General's Strangler Division. Attorney General John S. Bottomley states the following. They believe they know who is responsible for 9, possibly 10, of the 11 killings attributed to the Boston Strangler. They have 6 prime suspects, 3 in custody on other charges. The 3 suspects not in custody freely walking the streets are under surveillance by police and other authorities. The psychologists hired by the division believe the North Shore murders can be attributed to 1 suspect. The psychologists hired by the division believe the Boston proper killings are a different suspect. However, in contrast to the findings of the psychologists, Bottomley believes it is 1 suspect who is responsible for 8 of the 10 identified murders at this point. Again, my brain is melting. What is this dude even saying? He said 11 murders in the paragraph above this statement. All victims were killed by their own stockings. Most, but not all, were sexually assaulted. They suspect the strangler is entering homes under the guise of being a repairman or someone the landlord has hired to work in their apartments or on their properties. The strangler leaves no sign of forced entry, nor takes anything from the crime scene. All of the victims are single, unwed, or widowed women. They are currently developing a computer program with the help of MIT professors and students in the hope they can find connections between victims, thus finding the suspect. This computer is on loan from Concord Computer Services and apparently will crack the case. This must be a wonder computer because Bottomley states this computer is going to compare neighborhoods of the victims and see if there is any duplication in that area. It can also find duplications in hobbies. In the case of the strangler, most of the victims showed a strong interest in music. What is this dude even trying to say? Duplication of what? So let's break this down. There are 6 prime suspects, 3 in custody, 3 at large, but under surveillance. All of the victims were unmarried and or widowed women, strangled with their stockings, with no sign of forced entry. There are 2 killers, but maybe actually 1 killer. They are not sure. There is a magical computer that Bottomley cannot seem to describe what it will actually do, and he is spitting technological facts to the press like he is a congressman attempting to question the CEO of TikTok during that shit show of a congressional hearing. The article, for all its faults, seems to speak directly to the strangler. In it, Attorney General Bottomley makes it evident that investigators will catch the killer and his days of strangling are coming to a quick end. It is telling the strangler that they are on to him. He is being watched, just like at the end of the film. All of this tension could provoke the strangler to kill again, perhaps wanting to prove that the police have nothing on him and that they are chasing suspects in the wrong direction. I don't believe it is coincidental that Goldie would be found dead the next day. Goldie's murder, and yes, I am now declaring it a murder, caused a problem for investigators. Just 24 hours earlier, the Strangler Division and Attorney General Bottomley made it clear they had their 3 prime suspects who were out running free on the streets under tight surveillance. They had their targets in their sights, but now they have another victim. If Goldie were to be included in the official victim count, it would show failure on the part of the Boston Police, the FBI, the Strangler Division, and on Bottomley himself. The wrong people were being surveilled. It was far easier for investigators to spin the murder into a case of a frail lady unable to handle her ailments and taking her own life. They didn't even properly investigate it as anything other than a suicide. They couldn't admit that they were wrong. They decided to save their reputation while destroying the Fine and Bloomberg families. If Boston police, the FBI, and the Strangler Division ignored Goldie's murder to preserve public favor, how many other Goldies are out there? Could the Boston Strangler have been caught and properly prosecuted for the murders if Goldie was included in the victim count, instead of deciding the Strangler's last killing was committed in January of 1964? Since when do police decide when a serial killer is done being a murderer? Albert DeSalvo was only charged with one count of rape before confessing to the Strangler killings. That confession led investigators to add 2 other murders to the Strangler list. DeSalvo was never charged with murder. After interviewing Goldie's relative, I learned that Hyman's son Melvin and the entire Fine Bloomberg families were absolutely destroyed by the loss of their beloved matriarch. Melvin suffered a complete nervous breakdown, concurrently experiencing a lifelong depressive condition, requiring counseling and treatment following Goldie's murder. Neither Melvin, Hyman, nor many other family members ever believed it was suicide. We don't know if Hyman was given the full report with the manner of death listed, or if he just didn't want to see what they concluded was the cause of Goldie leaving him as she did. The relative, and I presume it, is listed as undetermined. The shortened death record from Norwood does not list a manner of death. We requested it from the Boston Medical Examiner, but are still awaiting a reply. As it stands now, there is an open FOIA request with both the Boston Police and the Norwood Police. A clerk with the Norwood Record Office responded back, stating they have not located any record of this event. Those records may have been lost to a flood in the storage location some 25 years ago. My intent with this article is to tell the story of a family shattered by injustice. The hope is that we can find answers to lessen the heavy weight this murder has caused this family a burden that has lasted several generations. They would like real answers, solid facts, and to know once and for all if Goldie was a victim of the Boston Strangler.